Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is just afternoon here on the East Coast. If you're on the Pacific Coast or places in between, it's not quite noon yet. And if you're somewhere else on this globe, who knows what time it is, but somewhere it's NCK time somewhere on the planet. It's time for some new cosmic knowledge. It's time for some new cosmic understanding. It's time for some time for mama to get some new shoes. Time to get rolling. Having a little bit of fun with Big Teddy Smooth. Says that his MYSTECH has really been helping him out. I said, it sounds like it's making you smoother, Big Teddy. He says, yeah, just don't ask my wife. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. Welcome to the New Cosmic Knowledge channel. We do the CWB work here. We do a lot of work here. And we are here to talk about the search for parabiblical wisdom, and we want to talk about Francis Bacon, William Shakespeare, and that snuck up on me. Sorry for that. As right on cue, the guy with the blower comes up the driveway, and the Rosicrucian connection. This should be very, very interesting. And let me just tell you right from the beginning, as this guy spends more time than he's ever spent in my driveway. Hey, Mark, nice to see you. Let me just give you a what's that called? Not a warning, not a preview, but a caution. Can't think of the right word right now, but if you are not ready for some deep truth, if you're not ready to have your paradigms challenged, if you're not ready to hear some things that you might not agree with, if you're not ready to have yourself challenged, then you might not want to listen to this broadcast, because this goes to the very depths of what we're talking about. We're going to the very depth of what, thank you, Shane, the core of the great fear and guilt control matrix. It's a disclaimer that I was trying to issue to you. So keep that in mind as we look at Francis Bacon, William Shakespeare, and the Rosicrucians. And some people are saying, what in the world are you talking about? And really, it should be Francis Bacon, William Shakespeare, the King James Version, and the Rosicrucians. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you never heard any of this, it's going to leave you going, rah, 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 rah. If you have heard some of this, I think that you will enjoy it. And I think there's a lot of you out there like Holly that says, I was born to be challenged. So that's what it's all about today. The Rosicrucians. Wow. Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do it anyway. Francis Bacon and the Rosicrucians, the King James Version, William Shakespeare. And before we get started, let me just call your attention to something that allows me to do what I do. Let me give you the shameless plug. We're still working on fixing this up here, because, we've gone from Christian Whistleblower to New Cosmic Knowledge. The CWB work is encapsulated within New Cosmic Knowledge. New Cosmic Knowledge is beyond that. And if you just click here on this MYSTECH logo, what you can do is find out that I've teamed up with MYSTECH in dedication to improving the quality of life through ancient and advanced natural technologies. I do wear and recommend MYSTECH bands. They've improved my life. I believe they'll improve your life as well. You can visit the MYSTECH site by going here, decide which of the products that you want to wear. Just make sure that you go back to my website, click this button here that says donate, because when you do, and only when you do, only when you see this, MYSTECH bands by Jeffrey Daugherty, only then do you save a full 20%. Do you think I believe in them? What do you think? I've got 8 on right now, plus the 432 necklace that we're testing out. I think it works. So from now on, if you say, oh, Jeff, come purify my house in Seattle, you can't afford to pay for me to come out there. Well, that's okay, because I can send you one of these 432 necklaces, and we believe it's creating a field. We believe it's creating a field where unbalanced entities either have to snap back into balance or they have to leave you alone. So on the cutting edge of technology, and here it is. So let's talk about King James Version of the Bible, Francis Bacon, William Shakespeare, and the Rosicrucians. So let's talk about it, and let's talk about it from the perspective of a person who I have great respect for, and a person who Sandra D. Angelo and I are going to be talking to in our new show coming out not this week but next week, called Conversations from Beyond. We're going to interview Manly P. Hall. We're going to talk to Manly P. Hall. We're going to discuss spirituality with Manly P. Hall. Think about that for a minute. I'll wait, but yes, we're going to do it. Now, I like the way that Hall talks about this. He says, I'm not digging up the Bacon, Shakespeare, Rosicrucian controversy just to dig up dead men's bones, but what he really wants to do, and what I want to do beyond anything else, is provide some critical analysis that will aid in the rediscovery of knowledge lost to the world since oracles were silenced. The Bard of Avon, Shakespeare, has been called Phantom Captain Shakespeare, the Rosicrucian mask, and this is one of the most significant statements relating to the Bacon-Shakespeare controversy. So let's just back up a second and say, Jeff, what in the world are you talking about? There are many people that believe, and there is a lot of objective empirical evidence for your consideration, that the King James Version was written by Francis Bacon, who was really William Shakespeare. And that Shakespeare was a fictional creation. So, Jeff, you're telling me the King James Version was written by William Shakespeare, but it wasn't William Shakespeare, it was really Francis Bacon. I'm suggesting to you and presenting evidence for your consideration. And if this is even partially true, it changes everything. It changes the very basis of modern Western culture. It changes the very basis of modern Western religion. It changes everything, ladies and gentlemen, if this is even partially true. This is great, big, bad stuff. Let's talk it over. Let's consider it. And we're going to take our time and go through the chat and make sure that we're not missing anybody. Conversations with God, the 3 books, Kevin Bacon relation. That's interesting. I don't know. Let's check it out. Is Kevin Bacon related to Francis Bacon? It doesn't look like he's directly related to Francis Bacon, Sir Francis Bacon. That's a great question, though. That's why I like this group so much. They're always thinking. All right, so it's quite evident, and this is from empirical, objective data. What do you mean by that, Jeff? I mean that if you take emotion out of the equation, if you take belief out of the equation, if you take dedication out of the equation, and you simply objectively view things without any emotion, without any passion, if you just view empirically, objectively, there is a lot of information suggesting that William Shakespeare could not, by himself, have produced what many would call, and what I would agree to be, nearly immortal writings bearing his name. I have an associate's degree with emphasis in anthropology and geography, and I took 2 years of Shakespeare. It sounds weird if you don't know it, but as you listen to it and as you study it, it is fascinating. This is when I first started thinking, wait a second, how could this happen? Because we're talking about a man in William Shakespeare who just didn't have the training. He just didn't have the culture. And where he was born, Stratford upon Avon, ladies and gentlemen, there wasn't even a school there. Not a single school capable of teaching him the higher forms of learning that were reflected in the writings that we're told are his. William Shakespeare's parents were illiterate. By all accounts, in his early life, William Shakespeare showed a total disregard for study. And this man that's written all these plays, there's only 6 known examples of his handwriting, and every one of them are nothing more than signatures. 3 of them are in his will. Experts say it's a scrawling, uncertain method of execution, which stamps Shakespeare as unfamiliar with the use of a pen. And it's obvious that either he copied a signature prepared for him or that his hand was guided while he wrote. No autographed manuscripts of the Shakespearean plays or sonnets have been discovered. There's not even a tradition concerning them other than the fantastic and possible statements that are attributed by Shakespeare aficionados. The man, by all occasions, was illiterate. His parents were illiterate. He couldn't even write his own name, and they want us to believe that he wrote all of those incredible, amazing plays and poems and sonnets. It's crazy. I don't think Shakespeare's work is overrated. My point, in my belief. Shane says that he's heard that Shakespeare was actually illiterate. A friend said he was the writer of the King James Bible in the Old English. Delaney, Shakespeare did write the King James Bible, it sounds like, but it wasn't Shakespeare. It was Sir Francis Bacon who played Shakespeare. Somebody says, Holly says, did Shakespeare sell his soul? Very interesting. So obviously the man isn't the point, so there must be a profundity in the teachings. I would agree with that. The works of Shakespeare are filled with Rosicrucian and Freemasonic numerology and symbols. I think we're going to get to that, Roman hoax. Holly says, crazy thespians. Never trust a thespian. You can't trust a thespian any further than you can throw them. Of course, a thespian is an actor or an actress. Don't get carried away. Okay. To write the things that Shakespeare wrote, a well-stocked library would have been essential. The knowledge that he put into his plays was wide-ranging and came from many different sources, from many different cultures. It was indicative of the highest of educations of that day. And yet, there's no record that William Shakespeare ever possessed as much as a single book, much less a library. And there were no books left in his will. Think of that for a minute, if you will. In the will of William Shakespeare, arguably, reputedly, the greatest writer in history, and he didn't leave anybody even as much as one single book. Ladies and gentlemen, that's weird. Ladies and gentlemen, that's whack, as we used to say. Something does not add up. Couldn't write his own name. Apparently illiterate. Didn't own a single book. Didn't leave a single book to anyone. And his daughter, named Judith, at 27 years old, could not sign her own name. What are the chances that the daughter of the greatest English writer in history couldn't even write her own name. Ladies and gentlemen, what are the chances? What are the chances? Would a man that did write all the plays that Shakespeare wrote, would he have permitted his own daughter to reach womanhood and to marry without being able to read one single line of the writings that made her father wealthy and locally famous? To be or not to be? That is the question that preoccupies my soul. Did he or didn't he? Is the question that preoccupies our soul here today. And the writings of Shakespeare evidence knowledge of French, Italian, Spanish, Danish, as well as classical Latin and Greek. Shakespeare didn't understand Latin, didn't understand Greek, according to Ben Jonson, one of William Shakespeare's closest associates. And it's also a little more than strange, says Manly P. Hall, that no record exists of William Shakespeare ever having played a leading role in the famous dramas he's supposed to have written or in others produced by the company of which he was a member. He owned a little piece of the Globe Theater, but the height of his acting career, the height of Shakespeare's Shakespearean career, was playing the ghost in Hamlet. Wow. Wow. It's just crazy. What are people saying here? They're saying ask the rods. We'll do that. You'd get great betting odds on that. Shakespeare also hid the birth of his twin daughters for fear they would be killed. I'd say the chances are 5,000 to 1. Thank you, Melissa. Dropping truth bombs is just what I do. Sounds like he had a ghostwriter. Sounds a lot like Plastic Jesus, who left no writings, clearly used a pseudonym, left profound teachings. Interesting. Yes, it is. I hear somebody blowing up my phone in there, but I'm away from it. So let's hope that it's not all that important. If you have to get in touch with me while I'm live on air, you know where to text me. And if you don't know, it's not that important. So William Shakespeare was not a well-traveled man. I don't know if he ever even went to the park, Iowa X. Shakespeare never tried during his lifetime to control or secure remuneration, which means payment, for the plays bearing his name, many of which were first published anonymously. None of his heirs were ever involved in the printing of his plays after their death. None of his heirs ever benefited financially therefrom. If Shakespeare had been their author, his manuscripts, his unpublished plays would have constituted the most valuable possessions, yet his will, which did include the disposition of his bed and a broad silver gilt bowl, neither mentioned nor intimates that he possessed any literary productions whatsoever. William Shakespeare, who supposedly wrote all those plays, didn't leave them to anybody. Ladies and gentlemen, what in the world is going on? What in the world is going on? How can this be true? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm asking you, what's going on? I'm wondering what you think. Maybe he was a distraction. Some say he was Christopher Marlowe. So amazing, ladies and gentlemen. How can we trust him? Very compelling indeed. No thinking person could believe that these plays were written by Shakespeare. I tend to agree with you. Manly P. Hall was a Freemason. How can we trust him? Do you know how many people, how many great writers, how many great inventors, as the name Leonardo da Vinci comes up, were involved with the Freemasons? Do you really think the Freemasons and even the Rosicrucians of the day are what they are today? Are you really, if you threw out everything that came through a person that was affiliated with the Freemasons, if you threw out everything that came through a person that was affiliated with the Rosicrucians, you'd probably be dead, because much of our modern scientific discovery, much of our anti-death technology, much of our modern wisdom has come through people that were affiliated with the Freemasons, that people were affiliated with the Rosicrucians and other secret societies. Just think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Use your bean. Use your bean for something besides holding up your hair. Back in the day, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, other secret societies, that's where the smart people hung out. That's where the thinkers hung out. It ain't like it was today. It wasn't like it was then. It wasn't, you know what I'm saying? It was different back then. Am I a Freemason? No. Will I ever be a Freemason? No. I've been asked. I've decided it's not for me. Am I a Rosicrucian? No. I happen to know a Rosicrucian. Fine gentleman. But I'm not one, and I'm not going to be one. Nor am I going to throw out every bit of knowledge that comes through a person because they're Rosicrucian or because they're Freemason. I'm also not going to throw out information that comes through a person because they're black. I'm not going to throw out information that comes from a person because they're Mexican. I'm not going to throw out information that comes to a person because they're Asian. I'm not going to throw out information that comes from a person because they're white and they got short, gray, kind of spiky hair and a light blue t-shirt on. I'm not going to throw those people out either. Robin H. says that her granddad was both a Freemason and a Rosicrucian, and he was not evil. My grandfather, both of my grandfathers were Freemasons. Wonderful men. Wonderful men. They, in a great part, made me what I am today. That's why I was very close to considering becoming a Freemason. Both my grandfathers were Freemasons. My uncle was a Freemason. I felt an obligation to continue a family tradition, but I think the Freemasons and the Jesuits are a little too buddied up. I can't prove it. It's just something I feel. So I'm not going to do it. But nor am I going to throw out thinking, discovery, wisdom that comes from somebody because they're black, because they're Indian, because they're Asian, because they're white, because they're Christian, because they're Rosicrucian, or because they are Masons. So, and this is what happens to us. We get into that analysis in a vacuum. Oh, we believe in the King James. We don't believe in the Freemasons. So we're going to say we're not going to believe Manly P. Hall because he was a Freemason. And you don't even know what you're talking about because Manly P. Hall was an honorary Freemason. I hate to bring truth to you. I hate to drop truth on you when I know you're getting revved up to try to whack me. Manly P. Hall, from all indications, never went through rites or initiations of Freemasonry. Manly P. Hall, through all indications, and we're going to ask him, Sandra and I will ask him when we talk with him on Conversations from Beyond, we'll ask him if he was a Freemason. He was an honorary Freemason. He was given an honorary Freemasonic brotherhood, I guess you would call it, probably wasn't really a Freemason, for what that's worth. Back to William Shakespeare. All of his writings are signed William Shakespeare, Shakespeare. All the known autographs of the Stratford actor William Shakespeare are spelled Shakespeare. So evidently, he didn't know how to spell his own name, which isn't that hard to believe if he didn't know how to write. And isn't that hard to believe if he didn't even know how to use a pen? Did he spell his name wrong? Maybe yes, maybe no. But he was signing a different name than he was supposed to be. And I know some people have a stage name, etc. But it's still weird, man. It still makes you think. Is it significant? Maybe, maybe not. But should it just be glossed over, or should it be looked at? I think it should be looked at. There's also absurdities in the life of Shakespeare that are just not reconcilable. You can't make sense at them or of them. While he was at the very apex of his literary career, at the very time that he was having his most success, quote unquote, as a writer, he was trying to buy malt to start a brewing business. The immortal author of The Merchant of Venice, oh my, as a moneylender. Shakespeare brought action to collect petty sums of money from people that he claimed owed him. A guy named Philip Rogers sued him for an unpaid loan of 2 shillings, which is about 48 cents. And there's nothing known in the life of Shakespeare that would justify the literary excellence that's been imputed to him. If you don't know what The Merchant of Venice is, that doesn't make much sense to you. But the writer of The Merchant of Venice, sweating a dude over a 2-penny loan, 2-shilling loan, man, that is an absurdity. And I know that some of you haven't read the plays, but I think most of you know enough about them to understand that the philosophical ideals within the Shakespearean plays, it would be impossible for a guy to write those that wasn't thoroughly familiar with certain doctrines and certain tenets and certain beliefs that were peculiar to Rosicrucianism. And these profundities, these high-minded writings, show a guy that was initiated into that Illuminati mindset of the day. He had to be a hyper-intellectual. The man we know as William Shakespeare didn't have the training, didn't have access to the training that could possibly equip him to be a Platonist, a Kabbalist, a Pythagorean, and only a Platonist, a Kabbalist, someone that had written and read Plato, someone that understood the inner workings of the Kabbalah, somebody that understood the mathematical and gematria of Pythagoras. Only someone understanding these things could have written The Tempest, could have written Macbeth, could have written Hamlet, could have written the tragedy of Cymbeline. Only somebody that was very, very deeply versed in Paracelsian lore could have come up with A Midsummer Night's Dream. And Shakespeare had none of this. None of this. None of this. And yet, we're told to believe that this man is the greatest writer of the English language ever. Ladies and gentlemen, it does not add up. However, the father of modern science, the remodeler of modern law, according to Manly P. Hall, the editor of the modern Bible. Now, Jeff, wait just a second. Sir Francis Bacon. How can you say that Sir Francis Bacon was the editor of the modern Bible? That was King James Version. Let me drop a little factoid on you after I have a little sip of my tea. You ready for this? Get ready for this. For 1 full year after the completion of the King James Version manuscript, for 1 full year, not 6 months, not 8 months, not 10 months, but 1 full year, the final edition of the King James Version was under the exclusive control, in the exclusive possession of, and seen by no one else's eyes other than Sir Francis Bacon. Look it up. It's empirical, objective, undeniable fact. And if you don't believe there was some midsummer night dreaming going on, it is incumbent upon you to explain to me what he was doing for a year with the writings from King Jimmy. I might be totally wrong. I might be full of hot air. But you tell me why, for 1 full year after the King James Version was supposedly completed, it was in the home and exclusive possession of of Sir Francis Bacon, who was the father of modern science, who was the remodeler of modern law, who was the editor of the modern Bible, who was a patron of modern democracy, who was one of the founders of modern Freemasonry. He was at least a Rosicrucian. It might have been the Rosicrucian. For those of you that know anything about the Rosicrucians, he might have been the illustrious Father CRC. But he was at least a very high initiate of the Rosicrucian order. And he was one of the leading minds of the day in symbolism, in philosophy, in literature. He was exceedingly well-traveled, had reputedly the largest library in England, spoke and wrote several languages, knew how to use a pen, knew how to sign his own name. Neither his parents nor his children were illiterate. To be or not to be? Why did King James allow that? It's a good question. It's a good question. Wow. What do you think? The King James Bible. Was it written by Sir Francis Bacon, or did he just use it as a coaster for that year? Was it edited by Sir Francis Bacon, who was nobody's theologian, or was it just covering a stain on his bookshelf for a whole year? Interesting points to ponder as we seek parabiblical wisdom. Today we looked at the writings of Manly P. Hall vis-a-vis Francis Bacon, William Shakespeare, and the King James Version of the Bible. I'm trying to see. We probably have another show left in this, I would say. We probably got another show left in this, and it's where we could get into some fun stuff like some code that was left. Maybe we'll do that again in our next edition of Seeking Parabiblical Wisdom here at the New Cosmic Knowledge Channel. Interesting stuff, powerful stuff, fascinating stuff. Visit my website, jeffreydarty.com, newcosmicknowledge.com. Soon to come. He was editing it. Sir Francis Bacon, Rosicrucian, not a theologian, editing the very word of God. Does that bug anybody? Something to think about. Can you connect John D. and Francis Bacon? That's a good question. And this is what we're all about. Asking questions and questioning answers. We're divine. We're sovereign. We're free. And we're not afraid to shine the light into the dark corners of orthodoxy. I'm Jeffrey Darty. You're the Gospel Truth Army. I salute you and encourage you to guide your own spirit, master your own ascension, be your own guru as you unindoctrinate yourself.